So I took part in the GMTK game jam this year with the theme loops. And what feels like 1,000 of other developers is, well, I decided to make a game about trains. But my game did not do especially well, so let's go over the creation process and figure out why. Bullet Train is a somewhat inverse tower defense game, where you are on the track and attack the towers around it. Both your train and the towers have slots for weapons and upgrades, which are these orbs. When a tower is killed, it will drop its weapon or upgrade, and it can be used to either slot it into your train or upgrade your train with an additional card. The orbs are turrets, health and power-ups, and regarding the theme, every time the train completes a loop, new towers will spawn on the field, with the base idea being to get as far as possible. So starting at the creation of the game, the first thing was figuring out what exactly I even want to do. But I had that idea of inverse tower defense in my mind for quite some time. I discarded other ideas pretty quickly and really focused on that concept, trying to figure out what settings make sense or what could work. I at some point came up with the train idea, which I felt was quite fitting. The original idea focused way more on a round-based approach, where you could only upgrade your train, for example, at a station each loop. But the idea was to always have some kind of real-time interaction somewhere in there. I also decided on some base rules I want to follow that game jam, which were mainly that I want to reuse as much code as possible, do not focus on art that I make myself, and that I really want to make player choices matter. With that, I jumped into Godot, and the very first thing was to find a game jam template, because I didn't want to do that groundwork myself. I then found a nice one from BitBrain, which I used. With that done, I started to actually work on the game. So my first task was actually figuring out the movement of the train. I used a spline-based approach, which of course gave me no struggles at all. But after some time and adjusting the spline to fit the rail meshes, I got something to work. I then started to think about the base structures for the towers and the train, and especially thinking about what kind of data they will share. There are basically two data structures for every train or tower structure. One is a static one, which defines things like the maximum health or the amount of slots that the structure will have, and a dynamic one, which will be dynamically changed during runtime, which is the current actual health or which orbs are currently slotted into the slots. And with that, I created the first orb, the turret. And additionally to the turret, also the attachable, which is the object that will spawn on the structure when the orb is slotted in. As soon as the turret spawns, it will figure out what type of structure it is mounted on to figure out the group it should attack. It will then get the closest target, rotate towards it, and shoot at it, if the cooldown allows it. Then I started on the drop logic, that once a tower is defeated, it would drop its orb, and then players could drag the orb to the train to use it, or upgrade it at some field, but both of these things were not implemented yet. And I think about here I just gave up on the round-based system, as that felt like it would need way more work, and I kinda just ditched it and just let the train drive around the track continuously. So now it was on to figuring out how to place the orbs on the train. But as the train is moving around the track all the time, I decided to create another train. This train should just represent the current state on the bottom of the screen and can also be used to drag orbs too. After somehow managing to get that synced with the actual train, I started to work on the tower spawning. So that means every time the train drives over the start position, a game manager would spawn new towers and destroy the remaining orbs on the field. After that, I started working on an upgrade system, where you can sacrifice an orb for a new train card. So I created this field where you can drag orbs to, and with rising costs can get new train cards from it. This also resulted in one of the best bugs of the game, as the field was next to the display train, and the display train got longer the more orbs you sacrificed, so at some point the train just started auto-sacrificing orbs that are on it.
What the hell?
But while I knew about it, I thought that's fine for now. And as it was approaching the end of day 2, I decided it's good to get some playtests in. So I packaged the project and uploaded it to itch for some of my friends to play. At first they were struggling a bit to figure out where they can place their orbs exactly, but they figured it out after a bit. Apart from some other smaller UX issues, also the bug with the auto-upgrading train resurfaced again.
What? This is...
Another issue of this playtest was that I only had the turret attachable for now, and no other orbs yet. So the choices of how to arrange your orbs on the train were not that great yet, but I was hoping with other orb types this would improve. So I got to work fixing some stuff that I saw in the playtest. The first one was the auto upgrade issue. I did that by A, limiting the maximum train length, and B, moving the upgrade field over there. With now roughly 1.5 days remaining, I started to work on 2 other orbs, which were an health orb and a power up orb. Both orbs have areas where they take effect in. For the health orb, it affects train cards or towers. For the power up orb, it affects other orbs. With these orbs I then also created towers that can have them on it and added them to the spawn pool of the game manager. That was the last thing I did on the second to last day, so with now the final day, I thought it's time to make the game look and sound a bit better. So I started designing a bit of the landscape around it and also looked for sound effects. For music, I did what all good gamers do and threw money at the problem. Humble Bundle had an audio bundle at that time, and I just purchased that one and threw it into the game. I then also added very small VFX to just spice up the game slightly more. As the submission came closer and closer, I decided it's time to do some final adjustments and also a bit of balancing. For whatever reason, I thought the game is currently a bit too easy, so I upped the difficulty slightly, which I then never tested with other people again. But well, submission was close, so I packaged the build and did the final upload to itch. And with that came the really cool time of checking out what other people created, but also checking the reviews for your own game. After the rating period was over, I think the ratings Bullet Train received were very fair, even though I was still a bit sad that it wasn't higher. So how do I think could that be changed? I think one issue was my last minute difficulty adjustment without any playtests, as this made the difficulty ramp up quite quick, which also someone mentioned in the comments. But I also think it actually has some deeper problems. My original idea was that players could make interesting choices via their orb placement, but as I got rid of the round system, that idea got lost a bit in the hecticness of placing orbs while the train is moving. This was made even worse as the orbs got despawned every time the train completed a round. So it became more of a precision game of trying to do something with orbs that the towers drop as quickly as possible, either slotting them into the train somewhere or trying to drag them to the upgrade field. This also created an interesting gameplay idea that it was one of the best moves to actually let your locomotive be destroyed, as the train stopped then, and players actually had some time to reorganize the orbs in their train. Another thing was that it was likely still not very clear what exactly the orbs do apart from the turret orb, especially that, for example, the power-up orb actually also works on health. As final point, I think also that just the 3 different orb types were still very limiting and not that exciting to use, as they were all still very basic. So where does that leave me now? Well, as I still want to continue this game more, I will try to figure out some ways to actually counteract some of these points. Like, for example, reintroducing a round system or making the train actually controllable. But more on that will likely be done in a next video. As this was my first video and also mainly a post-mortem for myself. If you watched until now, I appreciate it immensely and would love feedback from you in the comments, either regarding the video or the game itself. And if you also took part in the GMTK game jam, good job. I think it's really cool to work on games, even if you didn't submit it. I'm sure there were a lot of learning opportunities, such as for me as well. So kinda no matter what the outcome in the end was, it is a big win. And I really hope it keeps us motivated to keep working on games. Anyways, that's it for me now, and see ya soon.